We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Friday. We had a pretty eventful day yesterday, and it could get a little crazy today. We're still on indictment watch. We had some charges issued yesterday, too, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. First, I wanted to thank John Colbert for taking the time to do the podcast yesterday. I had a great time doing it. He's a great guy, very talented guy. You know him from TikTok. He's a singer. He's a humorist of sorts. He does a lot of things. And I reached out to him because we've been kind of talking back and forth on Facebook, oddly enough, even though we're both on TikTok. And I said, hey, why don't you come on the show? And he goes, well, I've never been on a podcast before. What? How is it that you've never been on a podcast before? Anyway, I asked him. He said he was free. And we did the show, and I think it turned out great. Didn't turn out like a normal Rational Boomer podcast, but didn't matter. It was a good show, and I thank him for showing up and doing the show and doing a great job with it. And I thank all of you for listening to it. I think you probably feel the same way about the show as I do. Now, tomorrow, we have another one of those good shows where I have somebody in with me on the show. And this time it'll be our old reliable Ed. He'll be on tomorrow's show. So be sure to be listening for that. Now, I will tell you this. My life as a retired guy doing TikToks and podcasts isn't all that work intensive. Doing the TikToks and the podcast is kind of second nature to me because I've been in radio most of my life and this isn't really all that hard. Well, I was put to the test yesterday, and so was my wife for that matter, because my granddaughter's daycare is on vacation for this week. So my wife and I had to pick up daycare duty on Monday and yesterday. Now, I love this kid. She's my favorite human being of all time. And she is such a little shit sometimes. She's not afraid of anything. She's very bold. She'll just say whatever and do whatever. I have no idea where she got that from. But anyway, we spent the day with her, had a great day. We had breakfast, and then we went to a splash park, and then we had lunch. And the toughest part of this whole thing was the nap. She knows she has to have a nap. But whenever you decide that she's going to have the nap, you can expect an hour and a half of fucking around until she finally lays down and has a nap. But I got to tell you, running around that park or running around her home and all this stuff, that's fucking tiring, man. And I'm doing this in the early morning hours of Friday, so I haven't been to bed yet. Although when she was taking a nap, she's got this big girl bed, this twin bed, and next to it, her old crib mattress laying next to it. It's really there mainly if she falls out of bed, she falls onto that. But I know her dad does this from time to time, so I did. And so I laid on the crib next to the bed, the crib mattress, while she was on the big girl bed, and we fell asleep. And of course, she fell asleep, I fell asleep, and my wife got a picture of it and of course sent it to fucking everybody. But I don't care. It's me hanging with my granddaughter. I'm cool with that. All right, let's get down to business. We have some emails to address. And this first one starts out, hi, Mike. By now, I hope the Cheeto-dusted face of the baboon we call Donald Trump is indicted for a third time for J6. Not yet, but it's coming. She goes on to say he is as guilty as the people that went through the Capitol on January 6th. All mostly white nationalists were held accountable. Why not the spoiled 7-year-old child named DT? I say no bail for the ringleader. I'm in Rhode Island, and like the West and South, it's hot here too. Federal prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He will love it there. That's where they put people like him. Best, youngest boomer. Of course, we know we have the oldest boomer that writes us, and now we have the youngest boomer. I presume she was born in 64 because that's the end date for the boomers. But thank you very much for the email. I couldn't agree with you more. Just be patient here. I know we waited a long time, but we're on the precipice now of Donald Trump being indicted for a third time. Actually, he just was indicted for a third time. We'll talk about this more, but he was charged superseding charges for the classified documents. While the J6 indictments didn't come out, some superseding indictments from the classified documents case came out. And that's not good for Donald Trump. Things don't look good. Things immediately got worse when this shit came out. We'll talk about that in a minute. Next one. Mike, I'm hoping you can help me process what is happening in Texas along the border. I wouldn't count on it. Governor Abbott has placed snag and drown traps and razor wire meant to kill immigrants along the federal border without federal approval. My understanding is that the federal government is taking Texas to court based on not having permits from the Army Corps of Engineers, which I can only deduce is a violation of the Clean Water Act. Governor Abbott said they'll take all this all the way to the Supreme Court, of course, which of course is a slow process. In the meantime, women and children will continue to die at the hands of the Nazi Party. I will agree with you. Greg Abbott and the Republicans in Texas have exposed themselves for who they are. They are fucking terrorists, literally. You put these out there. Now, keep in mind, we know that the amount of people coming over the border now is the lowest it's been in 2 years. So something's going on down there. Something's going right as far as limiting how many people can come across the border. But that's not good enough for Greg Abbott and the Republicans in Texas. They've got to put these things out there. And again, like you say, it's not just keeping them out, it puts them in danger and possibly injures or kills these people. You know, you can talk about borders, you can talk about the United States, you can talk about Mexico, but the bottom line is we're all humans. And this is a humanitarian issue. And clearly Greg Abbott and the Republicans in Texas don't know anything about that, don't care anything about that. And something definitely has to be done. It's ironic to me that the most the DOJ can do at this point, while they know these people are committing crimes and potentially killing people, the only thing they can do is file a lawsuit. We've seen tons of lawsuits since Donald Trump got into office. And like you say, we know how long it's going to take. The question is, how many people will be injured or die up until the point when they finally come down with a decision? This is a prime example where our judicial system is fucked up. It takes too long. Rich people get out of stuff, and the poor people always pay the price. Something has to be done about Greg Abbott. I'm not sure if anything can be done short of voting him out of office, and I would have to presume that that may happen next time around, but I think he's got another 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. So he's going to do his damage. The only thing I can hope for is once all these indictments come out, it's going to change the whole dynamic of the Republican Party. It's going to weaken them to no end. And it'll be interesting to see if he stands by his ideology or he backs off from it. Based on experience, we know they love to double down, so who the fuck knows what they'll do. He goes on to say, we didn't do anything when the Nazis occupied the Michigan State House. It emboldened them to attack the Capitol. The current scenario at the border, if unchecked, will lead to something more severe like sharpshooters killing men and women and children at will. Well, we know Donald Trump already talked about that. He was telling the people at the border, well, can't you just shoot him? They said, no, you can't do that. Well, how about if you just shoot him in the leg? Jesus Christ. What do we have, a 4-year-old running the country? It sure seemed like it. He goes on to say Biden should send down troops to remove the illegal structures. I don't know the legalities here, but I also don't care. Some lines must not be crossed. Killing immigrant women and children is one of them. Let Texas take the federal government to court for removing illegal structures on the border. Let them explain in court why they think they are justified in killing women and children. Let them challenge our military at the borders and see what happens. Fuck them. You know what they could do? And that comes from Joshua. Thank you, Joshua. You know, last thing you want to do is send federal troops down there to get into a firefight with other American people, whether it be the border guard or whatever. That's not going to happen. You got to wonder if there isn't some things that the federal government, Joe Biden, and the Democrats can do. What if you pulled out all of the federal guard down there at the border? Said, fuck you. If you're going to do this, if you're going to play this game, we're not going to help you commit these crimes. Let's pull all the federal people out of there. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to fund you either. Do what the Republicans would do. Take away their fucking money. I don't know where that would be or how much it would be or if you can do it, but I would certainly threaten it. Something's got to get some leverage over Greg Abbott and the Republicans, and they are just doing whatever they want. They're outlawing abortion, making free gun laws, and now they're attempting to injure and kill humans on the border. That is about as far as anybody could possibly take it. Why would we allow them to continue and maybe take it even farther? I can't even imagine what that would be. But something has to be done on a federal level. You can't just say, I'm the governor of the state, so I get to kill people. That's not right. You know, maybe there is a criminal charge they can go after Greg Abbott with. I mean, with all that's going on with the Republicans now and all the people that are going to get indictments and all the problems they're going to have, you might as well throw him on top of the heap too and just see what happens. Even if you can't convict him, throw him into the process for the next 3 or 4 years and see how he likes that bullshit. Got to be something. We can't just sit back with our thumbs up our ass and hope against hope that ultimately it gets to the Supreme Court and we win. Remember, we've got a conservative Supreme Court that has no credibility, no legitimacy, so we can't count on them for doing anything right. This is something that really bothers me, and here's why. They aren't thinking about injuring people. They don't, in fact, look at these brown people that aren't U.S. citizens as people. They look at them as domestic terrorists, rapists, and the like, just like Donald Trump said. So they think they're justified in taking them out. It may not be due process, but they're not American citizens, and we're getting ahead of the curve by taking them out. Well, the vast majority of people coming across the border aren't criminals, aren't rapists, aren't drug addicts or drug dealers. They're young families, women, and children. They know this, but they still do it. And why do they do it? Not really because they care about what's on the border. They like the whole perception of the thing. I'm tough on the borders. Like I said, the borders, people coming across the borders is the lowest it has been in 2 years. But they will sit and tell us that, of course, it's the worst ever and Joe Biden's got open borders. None of that is true. It's all trying to smear Joe Biden to help them in the election. Doesn't matter how people are affected or damaged or killed. It's all about them and fucking power. And that's always the way it's been. I'll give you another example. Since Joe Biden's been in office, they keep telling us, oh, the economy's shit. It's terrible. People are suffering, and it's Joe Biden's fault. When you look at the facts, though, you've got unemployment at its lowest level in 50 years. Wages are going up. Inflation is less than half of what it was last year. The economy is accelerated by 2.4%, and that is unexpected. Joe Biden has created 13 million jobs. And even the Fed has come out finally and said, yeah, there's not going to be a recession. I told you this when they first started talking about it. It was trying to push a message, a false message. They kept saying, oh, we're going to have a recession. Get ready. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, the Republicans would have loved it if we had a recession, because then they could blame it on Joe Biden. But the recession isn't coming. It never was coming. It was all scare tactics to get people all up in arms and to blame Joe Biden. Well, Joe Biden fooled them all because the economy is good under anybody's standards. If they continue to say that it's bad, they're going to have to show some fucking proof, because there is nothing that suggests that the economy is bad. Now, I know people will say, well, there are people struggling out there. Yes, there are people struggling out there. But is it because of the economy, or is it because of the greed of Republicans? There are people working full-time jobs that are struggling. Is that the problem with inflation, or the problem with greedy companies not willing to pay people living wages? I suggest the latter. I mean, this is something we've been dealing with. We know we've got the actors and the writers going out on strike. Hopefully they will have some deal come together, but they don't as of yet. And the bottom line is these people are getting ripped off. They aren't getting their due when it comes to pay, but the studios are making record profits. It's the same thing all around this country. That's a microcosm for business throughout this country. Big companies, rich people making all kinds of money, and we at the bottom are struggling. That's a whole dynamic we need to change in this country. If not, it will be the demise of this country. I've said this before. These rich people are greedy. They're like dogs eating out of a dog dish. If you keep filling it up, they'll keep eating it until they explode. Same with these greedy people. They never have enough. They always want more. They want record profits, and then next year they want to beat those record profits. But as I've said about Republicans so many times, they don't have any foresight. They don't see beyond the end of their nose. The reason this country runs as well as it has is because of the middle class. We are the backbone of this country. We pay most the taxes to help keep things running, to give these fucks tax breaks. If you damage and destroy the middle class, what happens? Everybody's gravy train ends, including the rich. What happens when the rich go to the well and try to get money out of us again, but there's no money to be found? Then what? Well, it's too late. At that point, everybody's crashed and burned, and the rich people will say, what the fuck happened? That's the track we're on right now. And that's what we have to change, not only for our sakes, but for the rich people's sake and for the sake of the country. I'm sorry if the rich, wealthy corporations can't see it, but it's pretty simple. It's simple math. If you drink all the water out of your only water hole, you're all going to die of thirst. The middle class, the rich, the poor, everybody's going to die of thirst. So use some foresight. And if they can't use the foresight, somehow, some way, the Democrats have to force them to do that. All right. Well, the big news we had yesterday, it was exciting. It was an indictment, but not the indictment we expected. We're expecting Jack Smith to come out with indictments for the January 6th insurrection investigation, and that hasn't happened yet. Now, we did have some activity in the grand jury, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and we thought it could have been yesterday, but it could just as easily be today. Fact is, it may have already happened before you listen to this podcast. I'm putting it out at about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So nothing on Friday has happened as yet. I don't know of anything yet, but that could change as quickly as early in the morning or later in the afternoon or whatever it is. We'll be watching that. And of course, I'll talk about it on TikTok and I'll talk about it here on the podcast tomorrow. But in spite of all that, it was not a good day for Donald Trump. It was another bad day for Donald Trump. Remember what I told you about a week back? I told you that that day was going to be the best day he has for the rest of his life. And I can feel confident in saying that because every day is going to get worse. And what happened yesterday is proof positive of what I'm saying. So former President Donald Trump faces 3 new felony charges in the special counsel investigation in the classified documents case. And this is including the ordering 2 people accusing him, witnesses, people who work for him that threw him under the bus. He ordered the deletion of a computer server holding incriminating security camera footage. You'll remember that Jack Smith subpoenaed the footage, and that apparently paid dividends because it's one of the main things we're talking about in these new felony charges. The special counsel and the DOJ wanted to see the security camera footage because they felt like Donald Trump was moving around classified documents that he shouldn't have had in the fucking first place. Well, damned if that weren't true. So what happens is Donald Trump tells one of his guys, there's another guy here that we'll get to in a moment, that got an indictment yesterday too. So we have now 3 on the classified documents. But Donald Trump apparently gave the directive to purge the entire hard drive with all this footage on it because he knew there would be things that implicate him and his people in the crime of moving around these documents. Well, it turned out that the guy that was given the job to do it didn't know what the fuck he was doing. It never got done, and thank God for that because now Jack Smith has that footage in its entirety, and it has proof positive of what Donald Trump was doing, his intent, and all of that. Now, the charges include additional counts of willful retention of documents and obstruction of justice, according to superseding indictment filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida. The counts came at the same time as a third defendant, Carlos de Oliveira, a property manager at Mar-a-Lago, was charged with classified documents case. Trump and his aide, Walt Nana, had previously been charged last month. Now, one of the things you can think about with this Oliveira guy, he is being charged because he probably committed crimes, but it is also going to put a lot of pressure on Walt Nana, pressure for him to testify against Donald Trump. Now, Walt had in his mind that he's maybe going to jail, and he's nobody. He's just a flunky for Donald Trump. Now he may go down and go into jail for one of the greatest crimes in American history. I'm sure he's not liking that. But he held pretty steadfast in not talking about Donald Trump or throwing him under the bus. So now what I guess is what's happening here, this Carlos de Oliveira is being brought in and charged and given the opportunity to flip on Nada. And as soon as Nada knows that, he'll know he's fucked, and then he'll testify against Donald Trump. I believe that's what Jack Smith and the DOJ is hoping for, but we'll see. Now, the new charges center on surveillance video from Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, where the sensitive documents were kept, alleging all 3 men attempted to delete security camera footage at the club to prevent the footage from being provided to a federal grand jury. See, what happened is they asked for it, they subpoenaed it, and then they tried to delete these hard drives. That's, at the very least, that's obstruction of justice, and that has a maximum penalty of 20 years. Now, Justice Department investigators had subpoenaed the footage, as I mentioned. And fortunately, they got them without them being edited. But the point is, Donald Trump attempted to delete them. So that's certainly obstruction. That's all kinds of things that I don't know because I'm not a lawyer. But Jack Smith, I guarantee you, has this locked down hard. I mean, it's amazing to me how amateurish Donald Trump is when it comes to committing crimes, how he steps in it every time. I mean, keep in mind, this is a guy that's been committing crimes and defrauding the government for 50 years. He's never been caught. Is that because he's so slick, or is it because the federal government and the state government of New York never wanted to go after him and turn it into this big, expensive fight? He got away with it because, well, like when they talked about Enron, too big to fail. I don't know if that's what they're thinking, but it seems like it. Well, now it's a different story. A day after Trump's attorney told the former president about the subpoena, Trump called his valet, Walt Nauta, who abruptly changed his plans and traveled to Florida. That's where he met De Oliveira. Now, a few days later, the pair went to a security booth where the video footage was displayed. De Oliveira later asked another employee how long surveillance videos were stored on a server before insisting to his colleague that the boss wanted the server deleted and asked, "What are we going to do?" Now, this is tantamount to a guy or a spouse trying to kill their spouse, and then they check their Google logs and show how to kill somebody, how to dispose of a body. It's that obvious. And how Donald Trump ever thought he was going to get away with this. I mean, he thinks he's smarter than everybody, and he's smarter than nobody. He's dumb as fuck. Now, the special counsel also filed a new charge related to previously reported audio of Trump discussing a sensitive military document during an interview. CNN first got that clip. Now, you no doubt remember the story. Donald Trump was at Bedminster in New Jersey, his club there. He was talking to some people, some journalists, maybe some people on his staff, and he was kind of teasing them with this classified document regarding Iraq and the possible attack of Iraq. He said Mark Milley gave it to him, and now Mark Milley's trying to say it was his idea, and Donald Trump's trying to prove it's not his idea, saying he got this from Mark Milley. But in the process, he was waving this document around in front of these people who had no business seeing classified documents. Now, the interesting thing is that after that news came out, of course, Donald Trump denied. He said, "Yeah, I didn't have a document. It was just bravado. I didn't have a document." Well, we know what Jack Smith was doing because now here's what we've got regarding that particular case. We've got the document. They found the fucking document. So it exists. They've got testimony from people who were in that meeting and saw exactly what happened. And if that weren't enough, they've got an audio recording of Donald Trump committing the crime. I'll tell you this particular crime, if nothing else was happening, he was being charged by nothing else, this would be enough to put him away until forever at his age. He's 77 years old. You put him away for 10 or 15 years, he's done. You put him away for 5 years and he's done. And so that's a pretty important piece to this whole thing. And it sounds like they have all the pieces they need to charge him, which they did, to prosecute him, and ultimately get him convicted. It's fucking truly amazing to me that that Donald Trump is this stupid. How did he survive all these years committing these crimes when when he makes it so easy for people to catch him? I don't fucking get it. I don't understand it. So anyway, That's what happened yesterday, and it's kind of interesting what his response is. Donald Trump is obviously losing his shit, and that's when you know that he's scared. And make no mistake, Donald Trump is scared as a motherfucker. He knows he's going to be convicted. He knows he's going to jail. We know that yesterday, Donald Trump's lawyers also went to see Jack Smith and the DOJ or the special counsel and talk to them. And the whole point of Donald Trump's attorneys going to these people was simply to say, oh, please, please don't indict Donald Trump. And then they said something like, he did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. And if you indict him, it will be damaging to the country. Now, moments after his lawyers walked out of the meeting, Donald Trump put something on Truth Social and he says, well, they had the meeting, went pretty good. My lawyers told him I wasn't guilty. A lot of other lawyers told me what to do, which is ridiculous because we know Donald Trump doesn't listen to any lawyers. That's why he's in the trouble he's in. But he's he puts this out there. I think he thinks that if he does this, enough people will believe it and somehow he'll get away with this. I mean, this is a pretty fucking desperate play. Absolutely fucking desperate. And I can't understand how he thinks he's going to get away with it. I mean, look at all the things he's tried in the last 2.5 years while they've been investigating him. He always tries these strategies and they never, ever fucking work. They never work. But Donald Trump is on Truth Social screaming and yelling. It's pretty funny actually when you think about it because it's so chaotic. Just what he's saying. He said there's nothing more than a continued desperate flailing attempt by the Biden crime family and their Department of Justice to harass President Trump and those around him. Deranged Jack Smith knows they have no case and is casting about for anyone to salvage their illegal witch hunt and to get someone other than Donald Trump to run against Joe Biden. Now, special counsel Jack Smith had previously charged him with 37 federal felony counts, 31 of which are espionage. These 2 or 3 that they put out yesterday, the 3, I believe are at least 2 of them are espionage charges. The total number of counts leveled against the former president in the case now is 40. That's even before the January 6th situation. Smith's office is also nearing charging decisions in the January 6th situation. Now, the superseding indictments, I want to remind you of something. We got the initial indictments for the classified documents, and now we got a few more. We got one more person indicted. But remember, back a little ways, we heard tell that there are going to be as many as 30 to 45 not indictments, charges with regards to the classified documents case. So they haven't even scratched the surface. If they're going to have 35, say, they put out 3 today or yesterday, that means there's another 32 coming still for the classified documents. And as I've told people before, and I want to remind you because I think people may get upset when they see the indictments come out. I may be wrong about this, but I want to get you ready for it anyway. People are probably expecting massive indictments with massive amounts of people in the first indictment. Now, it's conceivable that that could happen. It's conceivable. But more likely, it's going to happen like it did with the classified documents thing. You're going to get Donald Trump and maybe a few other people, and then down the road, you'll get more and more people. The reason why people are going to be upset about this is because they're worried about Ginny Thomas, Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, the sitting members of Congress. We want them all tagged with an indictment. And I'm convinced that we will see all those people that could be proved were involved in the planning, strategizing, and fundraising of this attempt to overthrow the country and undermine democracy. They will all get theirs. They may not get it in the first indictment. So if you don't see some names that are being indicted, don't feel bad about it. Don't worry about it. It's coming. There will be superseding indictments with regards to the January 6th coverage as well. All right, as I say, Donald Trump has reacted to the new bombshell charges. He's freaking out. He's fucking freaking out. For the audio folks, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Now, for those of you on video, you know, we're not taking a break. We're just here waiting. But with the magic of editing, we'll get back started again and we'll take you into the second half of this podcast. Now, as I say, Trump reacted to the new bombshell charges against him with an unsigned statement from his campaign. He didn't sign it this time, specifically attacking Jack Smith and Joe Biden. Big surprise. A lot of name calling and a claim that numerous fact checkers have found to be baseless. Everything he says is baseless. Why even check him? He hasn't said anything honest, decent, or true yet. Now, news broke Thursday afternoon that special counsel Jack Smith had filed 3 new charges against Trump. Now, on Thursday evening, Trump's presidential campaign emailed a statement to the media that featured familiar insults and claims that the prosecutions against him are politically motivated. I mean, that's his whole story here. He's saying Joe Biden is going after him because he's such a formidable opponent in the 2024 election, and Joe Biden wants to take him out of the mix. Well, Joe Biden doesn't need to do that. Joe Biden beat him by 7 million votes in 2020, and he has done nothing since that time to garner more votes. In fact, he's lost votes. He's lost support. And this is what he said. I told you the first part just a moment ago before the break. He said, there's nothing more than a continued desperate and flailing attempt by the Biden crime family and their Department of Justice to harass President Trump and those around him. He goes on to say, the deranged Jack Smith knows that they have no case and is casting about for any way to salvage the illegal witch hunt. I don't know that he absolutely believes this. Donald Trump is one of these guys that will spew lies in hopes of changing the narrative, throwing out rhetoric that isn't true in hopes that people will believe it or it will change the energy of this whole situation. And I'm sorry to tell Donald Trump at this point, it ain't going to work. It ain't fucking working. You're done, pal. You're cooked. Now, numerous outlets have fact-checked a lot of what Trump has said. They're always fact-checking Donald Trump, and none of it's true. It's all bullshit. But that shouldn't be of any surprise to anybody, given the fact that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. And we can always assume anything he says is just not true. As I said, Trump's lawyers went to meet with Jack Smith. It didn't go well, I presume. They were in there trying to convince Jack Smith that they shouldn't indict Donald Trump. But what you have to understand is when that kind of meeting happens, that means the indictments are imminent. Now, Donald Trump tries to play it off by saying, it went pretty well. I think maybe he's not going to charge me. Well, that's delusional as fuck. He's going to charge you. He spent 10 months doing this. He spent $6 million doing this. He's revealed evidence that convicts you cold if you go to court. Now, why in the world would Jack Smith do this? I love how Donald Trump says, well, it will be bad for the country. Yeah, that's what they said when Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon. Let's just get by it. It'll be bad for the country. It's time to heal. Well, that was the bad decision back then, having Gerald Ford pardon Nixon. In retrospect, that wasn't a good thing to do. But this is a far different situation. I personally think that if they don't charge and convict Donald Trump and jail Donald Trump, that will be far more damaging to this country than anything else that could happen. Letting Donald Trump off the hook will damage this country, and it's going to cause some unrest. And I'm not talking about fighting in the streets or whatever, but there is going to be a rebellion of some sort. It may be just completely in public opinion, but there'll be something. People have waited too long for him to be held accountable. We know too much. It's not like it's been buried in the DOJ and we don't know what's going on. We probably don't know the full extent of what's going on, but we do know what he's done, and we know it is criminal and that he is guilty. So the idea that we'll just pardon him and it'll be better for the country is bullshit. And I think the DOJ knows that. I know Jack Smith knows that. I think Joe Biden does, because people have come to me and said, he'll get convicted, then Joe Biden will pardon him. Well, why would he do that? You think Joe Biden is beholden to Donald Trump like Gerald Ford was with Nixon? No, that's not true. That's just not fucking true. But again, this is Republicans trying to do what they can to change the narrative and make it real. I mean, this is all the same way, during the election with the polls going into 2022. If you heard people from the Republican side or even from the left side media, they would lead you to believe that there would have been a red wave, or they wanted you to believe that it'll be so close, it'll be dime thin. But that was never going to be the case. The only reason they do this, the Republicans do it in hopes that people will say, well, we don't have a chance, so we just won't vote. It seems like a long shot, but that's all that the Republicans have, is a fucking long shot. It didn't work in 2022. The media, on the other hand, they don't want a blowout. They don't want a landslide. They want a battle of the Titans, because that's a better sell. They make more money, they get more attention, and they get better ratings. So you can't trust what the polls tell you, or the media tells you, or certainly what the Republican Party will tell you, because it's mostly bullshit. It's almost all bullshit. And I hate the fact that it's starting up again right now, going to 2024. I think we're looking at people who are better educated in what's going on. In 2016, we sat back and it was like any other election, and we were kind of complacent. Yeah, Donald Trump could win, but how bad could it be? Well, we now know how bad it could be, and people are in a different situation. That one of Donald Trump's arguments about the 2020 election is that he got more votes than he did in 2016. How could he lose? His argument is that Joe Biden got 81 million votes more than anybody else. That had to be a hoax. What Donald Trump fails to understand is that the reason there was such a great turnout in the 2020 election is because he scared a lot of people. A lot of people wanted him gone. Now, of course, a lot of the Trump-lefucks came out in force, but not just Trump-lefucks. It was all Republicans. They voted for Donald Trump, not because they liked Donald Trump, but because their dad and their granddad and their great-granddad voted for Republicans. They would vote for any Republican over any Democrat. It has nothing to do with truth or justice. It has to do with party affiliation. And that's been one of the big problems we've had for decades and decades. You don't vote for the best guy, you vote for your guy, even if your guy's a fucking criminal. And that's what happened in 2016. But people started getting wise, and that's why he lost in 2020. People are even wiser now. They know more of his criminality, and they are going to be even wiser in 2024. You think that was a big margin, 7 million for Joe Biden in 2020? It's going to be bigger than that if Donald Trump is the candidate. And as I've said many times, I don't see any Republican, whoever that might be, as the nominee beating any Democrat. It could be fucking anybody. Now, this next story is a guy I think, maybe down the road, 2032, maybe even 2028, might be a viable presidential candidate. He is a representative in the House. He is a Democrat from California. His name is Eric Swalwell. Now, this story isn't important. It really isn't important to anything. But I got to tell you this. It's a fucking awesome story, so I'm going to tell it to you. You remember a while back when Marjorie Taylor Greene was on the House floor and was in a bit of a kerfuffle with Lauren Boebert. They both wanted to impeach Donald Trump, and they felt like the other one was stepping on their toes. So they were arguing. And Marjorie Taylor Greene called Lauren Boebert a little bitch. Now, you can't fault Marjorie because that was an accurate statement, but it brings into question whether they understand what decorum is on the floor of the House of Representatives. To be perfectly honest with you, if you put Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert in a room together, they probably couldn't figure out how to spell the word decorum. But that happened a bit ago. We just found out about something that happened last month. You remember when the Republicans censured Adam Schiff for no fucking good reason other than his job. Well, that caused people to be a little heated. And during this process, Kevin McCarthy really bent to MAGA. And Eric Swalwell was a little butthurt about it. And Eric Swalwell yelled over to Kevin McCarthy, says, "You're weak. You're a weak man." Now, Kevin wasn't too happy about that. He maybe overacted a little bit. And he looks at Eric Swalwell and says, "If you call me a pussy again, I'll come and kick your ass." Now, if I was promoting a fight and going to bet on a fight, I would hand it to Eric Swalwell. Kevin's older. He's a little soft. He's a little stupid. He loves to try to act tough, but nothing in his demeanor, nothing he's done as Speaker of the House suggests he's tough. Anyway, Kevin McCarthy says, "If you call me a pussy again, I will kick your ass." Well, Eric Swalwell didn't back down. And he looked at him and says, "You are a pussy." Well, needless to say, Kevin McCarthy didn't kick anybody's ass because he can't kick anybody's ass. But it tells you something about the degradation or the deterioration of the House of Representatives. It's supposed to be a respected body. There must be some decorum. There must be some professionalism. But that's not what's going on there now since Kevin McCarthy has taken over. You have the incident with Boebert and Greene, and now we have this incident with Swalwell and Kevin McCarthy. You'd think they'd be focusing more on doing things for the country. But of course, the Republicans are obstructionist. The Democrats are getting frustrated. Here they are trying to censure a guy because he happened to be on the January 6th committee and part of an impeachment against Donald Trump. None of that was illegal. None of that was wrong. That was his job. But still, they had enough Republicans to vote to censure Adam Schiff. And needless to say, that's a problem for the Democrats. During that time, just before the argument, all the Democrats were booing and hissing and saying shame and all that stuff. Now, the conflict started when Swalwell led Democrats in protest after Schiff's censure by saying crying shame on the Republicans after the censure vote, after it passed. Now, while Swalwell stood near McCarthy's podium, he allegedly told him, "This is pathetic. You are weak. You are a weak man." And this was on C-SPAN. And you can briefly hear someone calling McCarthy weak, but it's unclear if the voice belonged to Swalwell. But witnesses there said that's who it was. Now, two lawmakers who witnessed the spat told the Daily Beast that McCarthy ended the exchange with a cold 10-second stare. Is that a stare like Mitch McConnell did the other day? Oh, wait, I got to tell you this. I know this sounds cruel and inappropriate, but I saw somebody put a meme out. Put a meme out with Mitch McConnell at the podium, staring vacantly after he had, whatever episode he had. And the meme said on top of it, just moments before, he said, "Yeah, these edibles don't do shit." You'd have to see it. It would probably be funnier if you saw it. Now, the next day, the politicians continued to go at it, according to lawmakers' accounts. These are people in the House of Representatives. During Indian Prime Minister's Narendra visit to the Capitol, witnesses say they saw McCarthy confront Swalwell while the Democrat was making his way to the bathroom. Now, remember, Kevin McCarthy did that same thing to Matt Gaetz, and Matt Gaetz looked scared shitless when that happened, when they were trying to get Kevin McCarthy elected as Speaker of the House. I'm guessing Swalwell wasn't afraid. One politician remembers McCarthy telling his rival, "If you ever say something like that to me again, I'm going to kick the shit out of you." And I would pay to see that fight. That would be a good pay-per-view. Now, Swalwell was reportedly ready to take McCarthy up on his challenge, as another politician claims they heard him ask, "Are you really going to do this?" Now, according to the sources, McCarthy bit back, saying, "Call me a pussy again, I will kick your ass." Now, both witnesses claim Swalwell's responded with a profane precision, telling McCarthy, "You are a pussy." Now, Kevin McCarthy, you would think he just said, "If you call me a pussy again, we're going to fight." It's not what happened. It was a brief stare down ensued before McCarthy finally let Swalwell pass, according to onlookers. Now, you can call out Swalwell for decorum in the House of Representatives, but you can't fault him for being accurate, because he is a pussy-ass bitch. Kevin McCarthy is. Now, the interesting thing is they're both from California. That's what's really interesting. And this is far from the first time the California politicians have bucked heads. McCarthy removed Swalwell from the House Intelligence Committee after assuming the speakership. They were making accusations that Swalwell had a relationship with a Chinese spy. And of course, McCarthy also booted Schiff from the same thing. So there's been a lot going back and forth between these people. Clearly, there's no love lost between the Democrats and the Republicans in the House, especially when you have the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Paul Gosar, Jim Jordan. These are some awful, fucking horrible people. And they don't get along well with the Democrats. I would imagine that there's been a lot more of these kind of interactions that we haven't heard about. But I got to tell you, it would damage the reputation of this country if it were to happen. But I would love to see Eric Swalwell kick Kevin McCarthy's ass. And if he didn't have the guts to do that because he's speaker, at least grab Jim Jordan and give him a head burn, where you put him in the headlock and just rub his head. My dad used to do that to me. Fucking hated it. Anyway, it seems like we've almost come to blows in the House of Representatives when we have these two sides going at each other. I understand the Democrats' frustration, but the fact of the matter is that's not going to do any good. It's just going to make people look bad, and it's going to cause more problems. The only thing we can possibly do right now, you can't kick Kevin McCarthy's ass and fix anything. The only thing we can really do is vote like motherfuckers and make sure that Democrats have the majority in the House of Representatives. And I'm almost certain that's going to happen. We're going to have several sitting members of Congress in the House of Representatives that will likely get indicted and charged with felonies, and God knows what will happen at that point. Now, we were talking about the indictments coming from Jack Smith. We've got the superseding indictments regarding the classified documents. We're still waiting with bated breath for the January 6th investigation indictments. And I really think that is going to be the linchpin in this thing, because it's going to be a double shot to the Republican Party. And here's why. We presume that Jack Smith will come out with his indictments before Fani Willis comes out with her indictments. And this is largely due to the fact that there's some overlap between what they're charging. And in that case, the common course would be that the federal government would go first. But they better fucking hurry up, assuming they haven't done it today. They may very well do that today as we're doing this podcast. But Fani Willis isn't messing around. We've heard stories about, well, she just doesn't have the facts. She's not going to indict. Well, she's got a lot of time and money into this motherfucking thing too, but it goes farther than that. Barricades went up outside the Fulton County Courthouse on Thursday as District Attorney Fani Willis reportedly nears a decision on whether to indict Donald Trump over his attempt to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. She's not just putting those things up for show. She's concerned about what will happen around the court should she indict Donald Trump. And I don't think there's any question that she's going to indict him. I mean, she's going to take it a step further, and she's going to indict him on RICO charges, which is fucking frightening. I mean, if you're going to get indicted, that's one thing. But if you get indicted and it's involving RICO, you and every one of your little buddies is in fucking trouble, and you know it. Now, it was posted that barricades erected outside the Fulton County Courthouse now look like preparation for some big legal news. Oh, you think? I bet they don't put up barricades for anything. I don't think it's going to be a summer parade through there. Now, Willis and May suggested that a decision on whether to indict Donald Trump was likely in August. We're presuming that it's in the first week or second week of August. Well, we're at July 28th. So we're not far off where Fani Willis is going to issue the indictments, and it's going to be a fucking mess for Donald Trump. And if, in fact, Jack Smith comes out with his indictments first, that is going to be a 1-2 combination like nobody's ever seen. Jack Smith is going to devastate Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and then Fani Willis will come right afterwards, assuming it goes that way, and do the same thing. The next couple of weeks, at most, are going to be the worst couple of weeks certainly Donald Trump has ever had, and the Republican Party has ever had. It is going to be absolutely devastating. And as I've said before, I think it will kind of change the paradigm. And when I say that, this is what I mean. We've already had a change or a switch. During the time Donald Trump was president, he would do criminal things, corrupt things. The Republicans would bully their way through. They had a little power, and they would get away with everything, or seemingly so. After Joe Biden became president, things started to shift a little bit away from the favor of the Republican Party more to the center and what's fair, and maybe even a little to the left. That change has already occurred. Little did we know that even with that change, even though the Republicans continue to fucking lose, they would continue to rant and scream and yell and cry and try to control the narrative. And this is one of the problems I've had with Jack Smith not getting to the indictments quicker. As long as those indictments aren't filed, then this rhetoric continues and the shit show we live in continues. It's my contention that if he indicts Donald Trump for January 6th, Rudy Giuliani, Ginny Thomas, Roger Stone, sitting members of Congress, Steve Bannon maybe, when that happens, that changes everything. And that makes a hard left turn. As I've said, you've got sitting members of Congress doing everything to do Donald Trump's bidding, to protect him, to save him. Watch what happens when they get indictments. They're going to quickly forget about Donald Trump and worry about saving their own asses. And that will change everything. Donald Trump will be weakened at that moment because he won't have the support in Washington, D.C. like he does now. So that's why I was hoping that we would see this get done earlier than later, but that's not the way it turned out. So we have to deal with what we have to deal. But I honestly believe that things are going to change dramatically when this comes out. Now, do you remember former FBI agent Peter Strzok? Peter Strzok is the guy that had an affair with another FBI person. Her name is Lisa something. And they were texting back and forth, and they were talking about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will never be president and all that stuff. They were speaking negatively about Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump hated that. He ended up getting both of them fired. Well, Peter Strzok on Thursday said that Donald Trump's newest filing in the criminal case over purportedly sensitive classified documents the former president stored at Mar-a-Lago demonstrates his abject lack of understanding of and disregard for classified information and national security. Well, we've seen that. His arguments about it have nothing to do with what he's going to be charged with. It's like this recent thing with this document that he had up in Bedminster. It doesn't matter if it's classified, but if it has something to do with military actions in this country, just by virtue of him having it in his possession, is illegal. Showing it to other people raises it to the level of espionage, and that's a serious crime. That crime has a maximum penalty of like 25 to life. You get one of those and you're fucking done. And that's what I've always said. He's got 40 charges in Florida right now regarding the classified documents. He doesn't have to be convicted of all of them. He only needs to be convicted of one. And this one we talked about earlier, where he showed these classified documents to people in this meeting. He admitted to doing it on an audio recording. They have witnesses from the meeting, and they have the fucking document. There isn't much more you need to convict somebody. And Donald Trump is in trouble with just that one case. Now, Strzok, who trolled Trump over the docs case earlier this month, said that Trump is asking the court to waive the requirement for classified info that every other single clearance holder in the United States must follow. Strzok's comments come after former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 20 years as a federal prosecutor, said that unlike other people, Trump doesn't want to have to be in a SCIF, something called a sensitive compartment information facility. That's where you have to be looking at these documents, not in a basement or a bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. But Donald Trump wants them to say, but it's okay if Donald Trump does that. Now, he goes on to say, I'm sure they knew this position was a loser when they shared it with prosecutors, Vance added. Strzok shared Vance's post saying that there is no better demonstration of Trump's abject lack of understanding of and disregard for classified information and national security. I mean, you can hear it in his voice. He has no fucking clue what he's talking about. He's just pulling shit out of his ass, hoping against hope that that people will buy it, but nobody's buying it. Strzok added, man accused of speeding requests permission of a judge to break the law and speed to and from trial. It's just crazy, and something his attorneys likely told him not to ask for. It's there because Trump wants it there, Strzok added. He further said, when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything, and you know that's in Donald Trump's mind. Donald Trump doesn't even know he's fucking himself when he hires these attorneys and then tells these attorneys what they should say, even though it's embarrassing for those attorneys. I can't for the life of me understand why these attorneys bow to him. Is it the money? Can't be. He doesn't pay anybody. Is it the fame? Well, there is no fame here if you're siding with Donald Trump. It's infamy, and that's not going to be good for business down the road. So I don't understand why they really do this. Now, Strzok then adds, this is our first real chance to see where Judge Cannon is on everything. It should be rapidly dismissed without significant argument or litigation, but under CIPA, an adverse ruling on this is appealable by the government. So Donald Trump comes out with absolute bullshit. And what Strzok is saying is, let's see what Judge Cannon does. If she sides with Donald Trump here, it's going to be a shit show. They are going to appeal it to the 11th Circuit. She will get overturned, and then they will push to get her to recuse from this case because she clearly can't be fair. Now, we talked about Mitch McConnell and his little episode. Now, I saw the video, and I'm guessing a lot of you saw the video, where Mitch McConnell came out of a meeting. He was giving a briefing at a press conference. He was talking. He seemed a little slow. He seemed a little unsteady, but he was going along as he normally goes along. But then all of a sudden, mid-sentence, he stops and he just stares. And you can see in his eyes that there's confusion, that he's scared, and he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And this is a problem. I mean, here's a guy that's probably the most powerful Republican in all of Congress, and he's incapacitated. Now, the funny thing is they took him off the podium, and then a short time later, he came out and said, yep, it's all good. It's all good. And then later yesterday, we find out that Mitch McConnell over the last year has fallen many times. Many fucking times. And so here's a guy that's in trouble, physically in trouble. They keep propping him up to keep him in power, because if they lose him, they lose a certain amount of power. Their power is more important to them than the health and welfare of one of their own, Mitch McConnell. That's how despicable these people are. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, the Democrats would never do that, hold on a minute. They are doing that. Remember Dianne Feinstein? She is a senator from California. She's about 175 years old. She was out for 4 or 5 months with some kind of illness we don't even know. Everybody called for her to resign, and she wouldn't do it. But the people that don't want her to resign the most are the Democrats in the Senate. And here's why. It's no better than the Republicans. Adam Schiff is running for her Senate seat. She's retiring allegedly at the end of her term, which is in 2024. Now, Adam Schiff is running for that seat. Nancy Pelosi and many other people want to see him win. Okay, cool. I think Adam Schiff would be a good senator, and I have no problem with him representing California in the Senate, representing the United States. He's a strong candidate. He knows his shit. But what does that have to do with Dianne Feinstein being made to stick in her job up until 2024, if she can even survive that long. Well, here's the deal. And the same deal is with Mitch McConnell. If Mitch McConnell dies or resigns or retires from the Senate, it used to be that the governor, well, I guess it still is, the governor picks his replacement. Now, the problem for Mitch McConnell and Republicans is that governor, Andy Beshear, is a Democrat. So he has full power to appoint a Democrat, which weakens the minority that the Republicans have in the Senate. Now, I will give Mitch McConnell credit for this. He had some foresight because probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, he was thinking about what happens if he retires or is incapacitated or something like that. He didn't like the idea that a Democratic governor would replace him with a Democrat. And I'm thinking, if you're going to be dead anyway, who gives a fuck? But Mitch McConnell did. And he went to the legislature and had them change the rule. Now the governor can't appoint anyone. All he can do is appoint a person from a group of people that the Republican legislature put together. And I say Republican because they're the ones in power in Kentucky. So instead of being able to appoint anyone, now the rule in Kentucky is that the legislature comes up with, say, 5 candidates, all Republicans, presumably, and now the governor has to pick out one of those. So once again, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans trying to game the system. Now let's talk about the Democrats with Dianne Feinstein. Kind of the same boat, not quite, but similar. Dianne Feinstein is not cognizant enough to continue to be a U.S. senator, even less so than Mitch McConnell. She's got a lot of problems. She wasn't even working for 4 or 5 months. She's now back, but I saw a video where they were taking a simple vote, and she had to say aye or nay, and she just sat there and didn't do anything. Somebody had to lean over to her and say, just say aye, and she did. Now, a woman like that in her current medical state should retire from a Senate seat or any job for that matter. They should retire. But the Republicans don't want her to retire. And she's like Mitch McConnell. She's been around a long time, and she doesn't want anything to happen that she doesn't want to happen should she leave. Now, there is a Democrat as governor of California, and you know who he is, Gavin Newsom. So there's no problem that if Dianne Feinstein retired, he would replace her with a Democrat. That's all cool. But as I said, Nancy Pelosi and a bunch of other people in the Democratic Party want Adam Schiff in there. Now, this governor, Gavin Newsom, has said, if I have to appoint somebody, I'm going to appoint a woman of color. And there is a couple of women that he would probably appoint. Now, you see how that creates a problem for Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and anybody else that's backing Adam Schiff at this point. If he puts in a woman of color in the job as a senator, she will have to run again in 2024, just like Feinstein would have if she would stay. But the problem for Adam Schiff is now this woman gets 15, 16 months of time in the Senate. She gets name recognition. Maybe she does some good things. And now Adam Schiff has to compete against an incumbent. You see where the problem lies? Adam Schiff could easily lose that if the woman who took over the seat does a formidable job. And this is what the Democrats are worried about. And this is why I always say to you, it's not about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about us versus them. To them, it's all about power and money and how they can get it from us. They can't go with the normal course of things. They have rules and regulations and laws, but they don't want to deal with that. They want to deal with what is most expedient to their efforts, and that's Democrats and Republicans alike. So now what they want to do is try to prop up Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell up until 2024, when they can be replaced by somebody they want. And therein lies the problem. It's not about who they want, it's about who we want. And we've given them too much latitude to this point, and that's what we need to take back. Again, I have no problem with Adam Schiff being the senator. I hope he does get to be the senator. But you're really going to put the Senate and our majority in the Senate in jeopardy with a poor woman who's very old and just not capable of doing her job. You're going to ride this out until you can get what you want. Same said for Mitch McConnell. Here's a guy that's falling all the time. He freezes up during a press conference. You really think this guy is going to do a good job as a senator? I don't, and it's not his fault. But the fact of the matter is, he's a horrible guy. He's an abhorrent guy. It's hard for me to feel sorry for him. I think everybody gets their due, and I think Mitch McConnell is about ready for his, and it's not going to be pretty. I swear to God, these two old people are going to be in the Senate up until they drop in the middle of a hearing or something like that. They'll cart them off, and they'll try to tell us, oh, no, they're okay. They'll be out for a month or so until they can figure out what they're going to do next. It's fucking appalling. And it makes me feel really, really not very confident about our governmental system. This has all been exposed now, and this is our opportunity come 2024 to make some wholesale changes, not only in the White House, not only in the administration, but in Congress too. That's where the real problem lies. A president is one thing, but if you have the wrong people in Congress, that's when things get fucked up. Case in point, the Republicans the last 6 years. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking time to listen to the show today. Reminder, Ed will be on tomorrow. That should be a good show, especially if we have some indictments to talk about. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.